we Tan was always big on like doing this opening and stuff, and like I don't think we've ever done an opening for Minds Roundtable. I don't remember.
I don't know. So many, like I said, so many different shows, so many different names.
Like
Can't keep track.
you do comprehend how chaotic this show has actually been.
It's not meant to have an opening. It's far too authentic and real to have anything as phony as an opening.
Right. It's
genuine conversation that comes from the heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you remember whenever we first started doing streaming and everything, and everybody was all excited, and we had like all these people coming in because we were going to try to live stream for like for the longest, I think, is what Altman had on there as a competition.
Mm-hmm.
And we had everybody coming in, and like there was no time to actually like say an introduction or nothing because you
that's right.
You know, and that was right here on this show when we started doing it, you know.
Competition.
When you're streaming a show, when you're doing this, you've got how the show's going to go in your mind, and you've got to make the coffee, and you've got to have a shower, and you have to wash the dishes, and you have to push this button, and you wonder if that guest's going to come, and like, who has time for a bloody introduction after all of that?
Yeah, exactly.
This is sort of what annoys me about the fixings on Wednesdays, because they start inviting people in what 2 minutes before the show starts, and we get called like 2 minutes beforehand, so I'm sort of in the middle of making coffee at the time, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm. Well,
hence why I'm about 3 minutes late.
I try to make it positive when it comes to stuff like that. Like, that's proper training, you know what I mean? Like, whenever, because like with us, okay, we all go on different VoIPs to do our shows. Like, this is Jitsi. Sometimes we go on Teams, and sometimes we go on Discord, and sometimes we go on this and that, and it's just it kind of trains you in, you know what I mean, on how to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because I remember when Skype was up and running. I mean, they would just do mass calling, and just all of a sudden, like, you're getting a phone call.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
That right there was annoying. Well, they still do it, I guess, but
Neil Key. It's extremely bad because because of his work sort of schedule, he sort of doesn't really plan, or he does plan, but it's sort of last minute sort of planning of when he does his weekly shows. So sometimes he will announce it less than a day before that he's going to do the stream tomorrow, and then because the work schedules, it may change to another day, and then it may change to another day.
There's time where he doesn't even give a day's notice.
Yeah.
You know, it's like he just puts down the topics and says, "I'm gonna start the show here in an hour."
So when I said that introductions were lame, that was completely joking. You know that I'm a person that makes introductions to my videos.
Oh yeah, I know you do.
Before anybody gets offended and thinks that I'm just being totally catty, I was saying that as a joke.
Well, I can see both points of view though, because you're right. When it comes to this show, there's absolutely. It's almost preposterous to freaking make an introduction.
If the entire show is just a single topic, and then you can just create a sort of intro for that one topic. But if it's something like this, then yeah.
Like, it's created its own monstrosity. You realize that, right? Like I mean, let's really look at the history on this, because I've been going over the 24/7 stream that I've been doing, and it's like going through all of the stuff from the beginning. First thing I noticed out of it is, Mark, your hairdo is just wonderful today. You have freaking come so far, and you know what I mean. From when we first started, okay. Just saying that you got your shit together, dude. And second,
Another that one.
and
I
second,
definitely agree with you on that one.
Karma was insane, dude. Karma Love was insane. Like
Very disturbing.
yeah. I was like going and listening to some of that stuff, man, and she was actually hitting stuff right on the nose.
Mm.
A bit too much on the nose in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
And the dildo thing.
Oh, that was yeah. That was. I think that was our fault though, mostly my fault, because I like she, when people get around me and I start getting funny, I guess they kind of like get a little bit too energetic, go to, you know what I mean, and I need to kind of tone that down. You got to admit that is true. A lot of times I just get a little too fun.
You do.
And
Sometimes.
And people can't handle that because it goes beyond their limits. You know what I'm saying? Like they have too much fun and they just.
I think that when you've been down the path,
mm-hmm.
you know which step is the step that you take every single time, which is the too far step. Oh, I took that step again.
Yeah.
And so I think that people stop you before they take that step that they know is the next one that comes, that they know how many times they've regretted that step and they don't want to do that again.
Just having too much fun.
Well, it's the road.
Mm-hmm.
The road that goes to more fun and even more fun until it's not fun anymore.
Yeah, and then you start regretting the stuff that you yeah.
So you just learn not to, like you were saying the other day when you were talking about not ever buying a drink.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just don't even start with number one. Just don't start. That's what I've had to learn, because I don't have brakes. I have 2 speeds: stop or go.
Yep. It's like
and I rely a lot on the people around me to give me the cues in the environment.
It's like what was it? That old potato chip commercial.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? One chip is never enough. You know what I mean? Nobody just eats one Kringle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
Actually, I cannot stand Pringles.
Pringles.
Yeah, I do not like Pringles at all. So.
That's just so English of you, Mark Edworthy.
Well, it's that sort of potato. It's that sort of. You might not recognise it, but I think Bob does. Smash.
Yes.
Do you remember the powdered potato stuff?
Yes.
It's that texture.
Yes. That's Pringles. Pringles isn't proper potato. It's mashed potato dried out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not an actual potato crisp. It tastes odd. Well, it tastes odd if you're expecting it to be a potato chip. If you're expecting it to be dry mashed potato, then you're not as shocked.
And don't forget
dry mashed potato.
Don't forget the insane amount of salt that goes on it too.
Yes.
That's something that throws people off because it's all salty.
Mind you, when it comes to crisp, I'm a bit of a snob. I don't even like Walker's stroke Lays.
That sounded so elegant, just you saying that like that. You know what I mean? It's like
more of a small batch kettle type things.
My goodness, I should really be editing this stuff to just have you, like, whenever you say that stuff, and just have like a little excerpt of you saying like small batch kettles and stuff. You know what I mean? Come on, dude. Whatever. Bob Dove had you pegged when she said like you are like the epitome of a British man. Like like if you picture in your head what a British man should look like, it's Mark Edworthy. You know what I mean? It's like it's true. I mean,
Not a British man. That's wrong. It's a British gentleman.
Gentleman. That's right.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
There's a difference between a man and a gentleman.
Yes.
I don't know if the blonde hair would work in this sort of situation.
I did
Can you
change.
imagine James Bond with blonde hair?
Well, no. Well, but you need to understand a British gentleman back in like the 1800s had long hair with a wig over the top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm thinking more sort of, I don't know,
20th century.
20th century sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, get that 20th century stuff out of your head. That's when the gentleman actually started to decline. You know what I mean? It's kind of like if you want to talk about a real British gentleman, it would have been somebody in the late 1800s, early.
Okay,
we go right back,
16.
Before gentlemen, we were knights and ladies, and we lived in castles, darling. And the plebs lived outside the castle wall, and they dug the potatoes and brought them into the castle and prepared them. And we sat at long tables and they served us.
Yes.
You must understand, the tradition is very, very long in Britain. It's not just in anything. Hey, Mark.
If anybody wants a job, I'm looking for a butler and a chauffeur at this present moment.
Yeah, it used to be your squire. Now it's your butler. Yes, indeed.
No,
Your gentleman's gentleman.
I'm going to be right back. I have to go outside to smoke. We're still keeping the no smoking in the house rule thing, so.
Oh, well done.
Yeah, very sort of.
And I'm gonna step out and smoke cigarettes. So, Mark, you keep Bob Dub busy so she can stay on the show and talk to her. Don't go all quiet and everything, because I still want to talk and hang out with her. Okay, that's all you gotta do, man. I'll talk to you in a little bit, okay, Bob Dub?
Okay. See you soon.
Yeah.
So you live in Devon, do you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Devon. Okay. Born there?
Sorry?
Were you born there?
Yeah. Born and should I say bred these days? Regret. Lived in Devon all my life.
Wow. So you travelled? Or
really, the furthest I've been to is France.
oh right, you've been to France.
Yeah.
What, to go skiing?
No, just
No.
sort of holiday sort of thing. I've not really been the man of the world, so to speak.
Yeah. Just yeah.
I've not
So what do you-
definitely not travelled as far as you have, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't recommend it. Some people love traveling, but I just reckon bloom where you're born, man. Or bloom where you're planted, is that the saying? Bloom where you're planted. You know, there's something that you don't have when you move country. Is you don't have all the people that you've known since you were 2.
I don't know. Just trying to think of who I don't really know very much people from my school.
You don't know where they are, what they're doing?
No.
What? You've lost touch with all your schoolmates.
Yeah.
Geesh.
Yeah.
Who'd you hang out with then? You got a new set of friends.
Yeah. Well, obviously I've moved places within Devon since, but yeah.
How about your family?
Oh,
You got a
it's
big family.
relatively small, I think. Or at least close family, anyway. As far as my mother's side, yeah, it was a fractious sort of situation in the first place, anyway. So, but yeah, again, I'm at that age where you see a lot of family die off, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're chopping down trees in our neck of the woods now.
Mm.
It's amazing. Oh well, it's life, eh? Things come in patterns.
I don't know. I live in a relatively small town, so and obviously it's one of those areas that everybody knows everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you know them all? How long have you been there?
Been here since 2000.
Oh, okay. Wow.
26 years now. Yeah.
Wow, hey? Sure. So you're well established. So I came here in, I think, 2002, I think.
Okay.
Or 2004, somewhere around there. Well, yeah, no, I don't think it's... Gosh, how time flies, hey?
Indeed.
So why did you move town? Did you move town for a job?
No, I was in an interesting situation, which I'm but I just needed to move out of where I was at the time. Somebody invited me up here, and history tells us this. Yeah, stay there.
How awesome. So do you own your house?
No.
No. There's a lot of resentment and anger here in New Zealand because the younger generation can't get into the housing market at under $1 million.
Yeah, same sort of situation.
Is it the same situation?
Yeah.
My sister is around about 56 or 57, somewhere around there. She's just bought her first house. And it's tiny. It's like an apartment. You know, the rooms have got space for one bed in them. That's it. No dresser, just a... So, yeah, it's a very strange and distressing situation when, you know, the entire younger generation is basically homeless.
Obviously, in that sort of situations, you can see rents increasing. Yeah. For perceptive rents, yeah.
Oh, well.
I don't know, and you wonder why people don't start families as much these days.
You can't. I watched a really interesting talk, how many years ago, 10, 15 years ago, I don't know, where this woman was saying she grew up in the years where moms were going to work. And she was so interested that her mom went to work. And it was this fascinating thing in her life that her mom did this thing that hadn't really happened before. And she had sparked this deep curiosity of what's mom spending her money on. So when she went to university, she did a study on what women spend their money on. And she thought that it was going to be makeup and underwear and all the little silly things that women want, right? What she found was that the price of houses has increased at the rate that women's salaries has increased over the year. So when women started working, they were paying off the extra of the mortgage. And then they put women's work wages up, and then mortgages went up. And then women asked for more money, and they got more money, and the mortgage rates went up. And the only thing that women have ever paid for is the mortgage.
Well, I was watching an interesting Lotus Eaters video not that long ago, and they were arguing that back up 80s, 90s, you could buy, let's say 80s, you could buy a house on 3 times your annual of a middle class annual wage salary, single person, single salary, and now it's something like 5, 6, 7 times.
Yeah, but see, I mentioned something to John Galt, and he just went out. He just flipped out when I said it. It's a lot of this has to do with people not learning how to properly spend their money. You know what I mean? Because like back in the day, man, back in the 80s and the 90s, people, you know, they had freaking they had an amount of money that they're. Well, I'm having a brain fart now, but they had a freaking where they, okay, I pay this amount of money, I pay this amount of
budget.
money. A budget. Yeah, they had a budget. Yeah. You know what I mean? They went according to a budget. Whereas today, people don't even care about budgets anymore. You know, they just. I
don't know. People do, but with things like food prices and energy prices.
Change. Yeah.
But it goes.
Well, my father didn't. I made my father make a budget when I was over in South Africa because I didn't know what he's going to do, and you know, I'm not going to be able to see him again. That sort of. And so I, you know, went through things with him, and he said, "I haven't made a budget for 25 years because it's too depressing.
Yeah.
There is no way I could stay inside my Social Security. There's no way."
I think the depressing part is when you start realizing that you don't have that extra money that you want to, you know what I mean? Because it's like they talk about like you need to keep your budget. What is it, 50 or 60% of your income? And there's just no way that people can come away with 40%.
Yeah, that's why people borrow. You know, because you're always short. You know?
Yeah.
I'm always over my overdraft. Always over my overdraft.
It's just
whenever I get money, I go up to the top where my overdraft is, and then I start coming back down again. I don't go over it. I mean, and the bank's fine with it. I've had an overdraft for 20 years now and been under the overdraft for 20 years. And
yeah, because they're making
the interest off me.
Yep.
Yeah. And there's something psychological about being in the red. You know, there's much more pressure on you if you owe than if you're above. If you're above, you tend to be more casual. And so in a way, it's sort of like almost like a motivator for me. Just because I can't afford anything. I can't afford a single luxury. I need to be owing the bank to remind myself the whole time, don't make the mistake of thinking that you're a human being and you can go and buy one of those, because no, you know. I'm one of the serfs digging potatoes.
It's pretty hardcore. You know, I mean,
we live in some very hard times. I'm hoping that They're not going to use the desperation as an impetus to push the youngsters into war.
Well, it could be a possibility. You know, things are kind of confusing right now for a reason, in my opinion. You know, it's not a coincidence that people are like sitting around wondering what the heck is going on. You know what I mean? Because nothing makes sense. Nothing.
Nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense.
And I mean, when I say nothing, I mean nothing.
The only thing that I can think where everything makes perfect sense is if you are an arms dealer. You're sitting in a pub right now, in a bar, shall we say, right now, having a cigar and a whiskey with your other arms dealer friends. I think you know exactly why things are the way they are.
Or if you're a banker, if you're a banking executive.
Yeah, don't say banker with arms dealer in the same sentence. You might get in trouble. Remember, you're in England.
Yeah.
Square mile.
I'm not suggesting anything.
So yeah, kind of be careful there. You're in the hot seat. Out of the three of us, you're in the hot seat, man. You're just like
you are.
You're a hop and a skip away, man.
Well, based on some of the subjects that we've talked about and some of the things that I've talked about in the past, I'm surprised I haven't had any visits from the boys in blue already.
Well, that's because we've kept you safe, man. We've said it for you, and you just kept quiet. You know, it's like I'm surprised, freaking, they haven't come.
We're foreigners, yeah.
You know, they have to
actually. It's a big privilege, isn't it? It's an amazing privilege to live in a society where you're allowed to disagree with the government. And suddenly when it's taken away, you're like, wow, I didn't know that it was so good. I've experienced that backwards, coming from Africa to New Zealand. Like, wow, I actually can be contentious here. I don't need to worry that somebody will come knocking on my door at 2 o'clock in the morning with an AK. I can say something provocative just for the sake of being provocative. You know?
Thankfully, we have not stepped over that line just yet in the UK.
Some of the sentences for some of the things are fairly ridiculous. I mean, for waving a Union Jack. I suppose all these things are nuanced.
They actually did that too here in the United States. Like Georgia used to have the Confederate flag, which was actually modeled strangely off of the Union Jack, and they literally took the flag away from there, and like the Dukes of Hazzard, whenever that big controversy was going on.
Are you talking about the battle flag?
The battle flag, yeah. The only reason why the Dukes of Hazzard became such controversy was because the truck or the car had the Confederate battle flag on there.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's an interesting dynamic between people who've been to war with each other, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. And you know what's the weirdest part about here in the United States? In schools, and I know this is true because I've had them, but they used to have flag days. Okay, where you went out on the field and you had sports and everybody did that all day and they called it Flag Day. I've asked people about that, and you know, I have yet to find anybody who's an American who even remembers having a Flag Day. You know, they're so big on the flag and patriotism, but they don't even remember Flag Day.
Maybe it's the Mandela effect.
It could be.
And maybe you're remembering it differently and it didn't ever happen.
Well,
it was very common. Even I was aware of the US's sort of Flag Day approach.
Mm-hmm.
And don't you still do that? I know when it comes to college and university sports, it's an entire business in itself. Don't you still aren't you still overly patriotic when it comes to those sporting events?
Well, sports is actually always been. They've always tied it to patriotism, like baseball especially. Now, baseball, they just think baseball is all American and apple pie, and then we've already talked about the apple pie thing. You like to point that out, like we were the ones who came out with apple pie first, you know. So yeah, it's apple pie.
It's apple pie here.
Apple pie and baseball. That's the two things that they are really, really patriotic over. Football is becoming more popular. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Bob.
Sports was never about being friendly.
Mm-mm.
Sports was only ever about competition. I mean, what creatures on Earth like keep fit in order to kill each other?
Mm-hmm.
We're the only ones that do it. And it's really good, I think, that we learned to calm that aggressive spirit and channel it into competition instead of into a death wish.
What it was. I mean, I think me and you actually had this conversation before, didn't we, Bob Dub, about like the gladiators and like.
I know we talked about so many things. I don't remember all of them.
Even the 20th century, sports was used as a real propaganda tool. I mean, I'm thinking of what the Soviets used. Sports as a massive propaganda. The Nazis did. What was it? The 1937 Olympics.
Yeah,
because it's a threat. It's a threat.
Mm-hmm.
Look how strong our men are. Are your men as strong as our men? It's like showing off the troops, but without that layer of it being the actual military.
Yeah.
This is our.
Well, you've also got the European tradition that goes back to the Greeks. These athletic contests, they were sort of a replacement for warfare. And the early Olympic Games, many of the games had to do with basically war games. Like they would have a race where you wore bronze greaves, or wore these heavy bronze helmets or shield, and had to run a race that way, just as you might on a battlefield. It was all about throwing discuses, which were weapons. The ancient Indians had them too, the chakras, and all of these things were reflections of warfare. So yeah, as Bob says, it was a way of demonstrating that we could beat you on the battlefield, and here we are beating you on the athletic field. And of course, their highest award was a simple crown of olive, which is reminds me of an anecdote when the Persians were invading Greece, and he had some Greek advisors, and he said, why do they stop all their wars and have this big sacred festival? It's like, this is the most important thing, and the victor of the Olympics, the Olympic Games, and instituted by the gods, and the winner is the greatest man in Greece. And what is his reward for doing all this? Like a wreath of olive. And he's like, how can we conquer people with all of our wealth that have no more regard for wealth and all this power than just, a simple wreath of olive? I think it was like a noble savage kind of a comment, but hello everyone.
Hi.
Hey. It's
and Silent Roger.
A good thing to. It's a good thing to interact at that level with that amount of restraint and dignity and forethought, Because to do things like making the prize for being the strongest, most aggressive man, making his prize a laurel wreath, is like you don't need to fight to keep the peace. There's a better way that we can be than having to kill each other over resources. If we could distribute the resources in a better way and use everything that we've done, instead of to compete with each other, to cooperate with each other. I don't know, I just think that's you would be able to bring up wonderful children in that environment. You'd just be able to build a different type of future with an attitude like that.
Not sure. I would argue that a form of national pride, I was going to say civic pride there, but national pride is a good thing in itself. Granted, it can be used.
Well, you can, and I'm thinking what Bob said about cooperation as opposed to, conflict. And, things, when we look at our history, when we look at our planet, the way we live on it, it's very complicated. And there are moments of conflict and there are moments of cooperation. And they're driven by what seem to be various factors. But I think at the end of the day, cooperation is the better evolutionary strategy. But at the same time, that cooperation can be used for like a larger conflict. That would be what Mark was talking about, the national level of things, because of the competition for resources, which and Bob talked about, distribution. A lot of it these days isn't so much a lack of resources as a lack of an infrastructure and a logical way to distribute them. And Terry Pratchett wrote that great book, one of his Discworld novels, and they were talking about one of his characters who was Death, who was very literal minded. And the question was like, how would you end hunger? It's like, well, I don't know. I'd look at the different socioeconomic factors and try to figure out a way to, create sustainable agriculture. I said, no, not him. He would just give everybody a meal. And that would fix things in the short term. But, a lot of the issues we have are simply short-term thinking, I think. Allocation of resources is more than just handing people stuff. It's giving them wealth, which means that they'll be able to create their own resources and have control over their own lives. But it does, on the other hand, there is that control. It's like hydraulic despotism, one of the favorite things that I like to point out. If you're controlling the flow of food or oil or water or whatever the substances that people need, you get to dictate their behavior. So you have these two opposing things in kind of a struggle, an agon, as the Greeks would say. We have this urge to cooperate, and I think it's intrinsic to us. It's very natural for us to cooperate. That's the first thing we learn. The basic unit of society is your family, and the first thing you learn in the family is cooperation, or at least it ought to be. So I think cooperation is a natural default for us. But there's a lot of ideas about how this became less important. I was talking to Bob not long ago about a guy named James DeMeo, who he's a Reichian psychologist, and I don't accept everything that Reich wrote, but he had some interesting ideas, and he talked about how not just individuals, but an entire society can become mentally ill. And I won't go into the details of DeMeo's thesis. If anyone's interested, he wrote a book called Saharasia, but the idea is basically that our modern penchant for warfare and fatality is, killing people is a recent thing in our history, relatively speaking, and that it is a form of societal mental illness, which of course implies that it might be cured one day. We can but hope.
Well, I think that the basis for war is fear. And I think that we learned to love and be kind about 2,000 years ago. But when you learn that, you also learn vulnerability. Before that, you're really hard. When you don't allow yourself to love, you're really hard. And you can get on with all the hardships. But when you relax and you allow your heart to soften and you are able to give people more of yourself, you also allow yourself to fear things more. And when you fear things more, you can start making irrational decisions. And when we were, as the warfaring species that we were afraid because we didn't know how to control things well enough to make sure that we could ensure our survival on Earth. One bad crop and we were wiped out, and we didn't make it through the winter. And that was our whole family, our whole clan, you know. So I think now that we live in this age where we have this ability to talk to each other and not be talked at via the television, but for us to initiate these conversations and talk to each other, I think that we're learning not to be afraid of each other, and that these people over there think this and those people think that is not true. We're all the same person thinking the same thing with the same issues and the same agon you said earlier.
Yeah, the struggle, the same. Yeah.
Mark, let's let you have a turn to answer, because we often talk over you.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking about your point. I'm not sure if I fully agree. Each country, each sort of area has its own problems. I mean,
Just so you guys know too, I have cheeseburgers or hamburgers in front of me, so I'm going to be eating, and I don't want to make weird crunchy sounds.
Very good.
But I am listening. Okay.
I don't know. I'll have to think about that one a bit further. Yeah.
Well, you know, I think I see what Mark is cogitating about, because, you know, we're speaking on a very grand level, if you like. And one of my favorite things, and I'm sure I've said it before, sometimes it's useful to look at an idea, you know, philosophically, theoretically, and practically. And if something is philosophically valid and compelling, when we start looking at it theoretically, we can see some of the problems that it might entail. And then when we try to practically apply it, usually we have all sorts of issues that we simply hadn't foreseen or thought about. It's very easy, especially when you're very focused on something, to not take into account all of the repercussions. So any kind of change, if the change is going to be comfortable, and that's difficult to do, comfortable change, it's almost a contradiction. It has to be a gradual process, I think, in certain ways. But I think this gradual process, suddenly it can become very sudden. And when we look at other changes in our society, you know, Professor Dutton says we have become kinder as we have gained an IQ over the years, as our species has, you know, got a larger brain and so forth. And I mean, not everywhere, not uniformly. But you know, we have gotten kinder in many ways. And you look at slavery, which is a great topic, because that was ubiquitous through all of human history. Nobody doubted. Of course, there's slaves, just like there's birds, just like there's the sun. It's just slaves. It's just something. And there was a slow buildup. I remember reading about this one chap in the 18th century, living in the back then the colonies in America. And he was a Quaker, and he was considered, I read about him in a book about beards. He was castigated and made fun of because he wore a full beard at a very shaven age, but he was also a vegetarian and who advocated for the abolition of slavery, which even his fellow friends, you know, in the Quaker movement, weren't on board with yet. it was considered like a nut. What do you mean to abolish slavery? What are you talking about? The economy would collapse. What are you, my family's income is you're going to impoverish my grandmother, okay? Stuff like that. The amount of taxes we collect is very important for the empire and this and that. Until gradually, people began seeing it, and they would use utilitarian arguments because it's very destructive to the economy, and it's destructive to the culture, and destructive to the human soul. And I believe all these are true, but if you don't believe in souls, you can look at the economy. And if you don't believe in the economy, you can look at souls. And eventually you had, by the end of the Napoleonic War, Great Britain basically dictating to the rest of the civilized world, there will be no more slavery. And this guy on YouTube, Drakenfels, just posted another video about the West African Squadron, where they would just intercept slaving ships and hang the slavers. I mean, just hang them. It's like, we're not arguing. I don't believe there was much in the way of a trial or anything.
I think it's so stupid, really, because it's just another indication of arrogance that leads to death and destruction. Slavery, the structure of society and slavery are two different things. People living in harmony with nature live in harmony with snakes and scorpions and vultures and dogs and chickens and rich people and poor people and mentally ill people and grossly disfigured people and mentally retarded people, and everybody looks after each other because we know that everybody has a place in the ecosystem. And so people work for each other at the level of competence that they can. The dog catches the rats, and the chicken lays the eggs, and the one person digs the garden because he can do it, and the other person sweeps the yard. It's not slavery. People work for their place in society. And so when somebody decides to take one thing of taking people and selling them and coercing them, and then say that other people are doing that because they're doing that, that's just arrogance. That's just plain arrogance and misunderstanding.
Well, yeah, it also reflects as slavery, as I understand the evolution of slavery, at least the way they think, it was another outgrowth of warfare, because you had to do something with prisoners, and if you didn't want to just kill them, they'd say, "Hey, I'll wash your socks." Okay,
but they had their place in society.
Oh, certainly.
They were just like
oh yeah,
they just had a place. They weren't there. They weren't enslaved. They were there because, you go, you take the resources, you kill all the guys. What do you do with the women and children? Do you leave them there to starve? Or do you say, well, look, there's a place in our society. If you accept it, it's there. This is what the place is. They're willing, they can join or not join. It's just, this was the natural way people lived, was that they understood there was a hierarchy. They understood that there were more fortunate people and less fortunate people. And yeah, they were slaves. If you're going to fight over resources, you're going to have people that are dependent on you. You can either wipe out the whole village and be done with it, or you can be responsible for the deaths that you caused and feed them and raise them to be productive members of your society. Doesn't need to be seen in terms of slavery.
Well, yeah, and there's early cultures, and I think a key to this is the smaller, less centralized, when it's just groups, tribal-sized groups. You don't have warfare driven by ideology. And also, when the economy changed, so that, the Roman economy at one point, the way it was developed was, to a certain extent, dependent upon slavery. And, of course, it produced a very lopsided economy, where you would have huge agribusinesses just with nothing but slaves and maybe some foreign workers that you didn't have to pay as much, driving all of the small farmers out of business. They were forced into poverty. It created this incredible, what do they call that, a K-shaped economy, where the wealthy just got amazingly wealthy and the poor were just starving, literally. And I think you can point to slavery at that. But it's sort of that thing I talk about, how cupidity and stupidity do more than conspiracy to explain the course of history. People are short-sighted, they're greedy, and let's more slaves. Look at the what's his name there? Octavius just made a whole bunch of money with his slave farm, and we're just going to grow cattle because that's the biggest seller. So we're not going to grow vegetables or corn, maize anymore. Well, they didn't have maize, but you know what I mean, barley and stuff and wheat. So the pork, we don't care. We can afford to buy imported wheat. Who cares about the poor, right? So it's short-sightedness and greed a lot of times just drives so much of this.
Well, yeah.
I've got to smile when you say stupidity, because I'm just thinking about what's just happened in the United Nations with the sort of within last week, actually, with their vote on attempting to force Britain into paying reparations to Africa and
really?
Yeah.
Oh, I seem to remember something about that. I thought you guys had just finished paying off the West African Squadron and all the anti-slavery efforts from like the 19th century on.
Yeah, the UN voted with I think 3 countries, 3 out of the whole load, and voting against, and Britain abstaining from the vote for Britain to pay something like 13 trillion dollars, US dollars.
See, this is where I get into it on historical events. Okay, like the abolishment of slavery wouldn't have happened without England. I mean, just point blank.
Right.
You know what I mean? So why are they even asking England for reparations? To be honest, like
maybe they should be tipping England. Thanks a lot, man.
They should be getting money for freaking.
Here's 10% of our gross national product for a year, just because you're good guys.
No, I don't support slavery, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I know history. It's like the Ivory Coast. Has anybody ever heard of the Ivory Coast? If it wasn't for England abolishing slavery, none of that would have happened.
But Bob does have a point too, though. It was a different slavery. What they called slaves in the ancient world were not what we had, where you deliberately have, tribes conquering other tribes just to take the slaves, just to sell, and for no other reason. And that was, a distortion of something that probably had a function in the society, because as Bob said, everybody needs a place. Mm-hmm. Even the guy that got captured at the battle, and now he's going to wash socks, but they'll feed him anyway, and it's better than having been killed in the battle.
Do you guys want to hear my beer thing again?
Beer thing?
Yeah, it's like
Yes.
Okay, now if you take a look historically, especially with the ancient world, and you look at when civilization started forming, you'll find that civilization started forming at the same time as the invention of beer. Okay, so and I usually use this story as a way of joking around, all right, but it actually makes sense if you look at it. Okay, you have a group of people who figured out how to use the ingredients around them to create beer, and they enjoyed it. And then there was this smuck over to the side who couldn't handle his alcohol. And they decided that this guy didn't need to be with the group, so we need to get rid of him. But there was one guy who was smart enough and said, hold on, he can't handle his booze, but he's constantly begging us to give him freaking beer. So what we do is we have him go out and do all of the hard work for us, and we give him beer for his reward. And you can see that being the beginnings of where all that started. And then eventually, as time went by, they started realizing that they could create actual slave parties for their groups that could go out and just, capture humans and make them into their slaves. Because that's how it actually first started.
The demon alcohol.
But I mean, seriously, if you take a look at it, like, everybody likes to take pride in the fact that we have a civilized world, but how did the civilized world actually begin?
Right.
I personally believe that it had to do with beer, it had to do with prostitution, it had to do with all of these horrible things that religions and spirituality is against. You know what I mean? That's how it actually started, in my opinion.
Well, not all religions at all times.
Right.
But yeah, there's always a morality. But alcoholic beverages were very important to a lot of worships, though, as well. But that would make sense from what you're saying, because the priesthood probably would have been the source of the control from the first place.
Do you know how important it is for the Jewish community to have good wine?
Oh yeah. Actually, Plutarch, the writer in the ancient world, they would sit around and try to figure out, what god is Jehovah cognate with? Because the Greeks and Romans, they always figured out all the gods were the same, and they, Zeus is they'd call, like, Odin was actually Mercury and shit like that. So excuse my language. So they were trying to figure out, like, which classical god is Jehovah? And Plutarch thought Dionysus, because of the huge amount of wine that is consumed in the temple ceremonies. And he said there was like a golden vine branch attached over the doorway of the temple, or on the lintel of the temple, and that the priest wore purple robes the color of wine, and had bells in the shape of pomegranates, which represented thunder and lightning, which were symbols of Dionysus. So I've usually heard him being more cognate with Poseidon, actually, the sea god, and Typhon, or Set. I don't know where the Saturn thing came from, except that Set sounds like Saturn. But I never really got that Jehovah is Saturn thing. I always thought he was closer to Poseidon if you were going to get classical. But the Dionysus thing is actually pretty close if you just look at the ceremonies themselves.
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing about the climate in the Mediterranean, that bugs grow in water. Cholera and those things grow very easily in water. And they couldn't really settle the Mediterranean region because until they discovered wine, and then they could drink wine instead of water because they were dying from the water. But when they drank the wine, they lived. And that's where wine got its association with life, is that if you drink this wine, you won't die, but if you drink that water, you will die.
Much like beer in Northern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I guess you didn't need germ theory to notice that the person drinking the wine or the beer was still alive, and the water drinker, I'll just drink out of this pond over here. I'm sure it's fine.
yeah.
Now, when I look at, like, the old, they had the old hieroglyphs and old tablets and stuff that showed, like, the Sumerians even. They would be sitting around a huge jar that was, like, I'd say about maybe 4.5 foot tall, and they would fill it with beer, and each person that was there would literally have a huge straw going down into it, and they would just drink off of it.
Bob wants to participate.
Oh my goodness, she did it again. You don't have to participate.
Sorry. No, I'm sorry. I don't want to participate. I was trying to type something and I was on the wrong screen.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, I think, it's funny. I was just listening to something about the Mesopotamian, beer drinking, and that's like some of our earliest records of beer, them and the Egyptians. I guess women were generally the brewmasters back then, and they were the ones that owned the taverns, And because it was yeast, I guess bread making and beer making were always kind of associated because they were both using yeast. And I guess back then you just couldn't go to the store and buy some packaged yeast. If you had a yeast culture, you had to keep it going so you could still keep making bread and beer.
The old argument about what came first, bread or beer.